Ezri, Esainai El Heharim, Me'ain Yavo Ezri, Ezri Me'im Adonai, Ose Shamayim Va'aretz, Ezri Me'im Adonai, Ose Shamayim Va'aretz, Va'iten lamod raglecha, Ayanum shomrecha, Hine lo yanum velo yishan, Shomer Yisrael, Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, Ayad yeminecha, Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, Ayad yeminecha, Yomam HaShemesh lo yakeka, Ve'yareach v'layla, Adonai yishmorcha mikora, Yishmor et nafshecha, Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvohecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvohecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. Al mekoma tavo v'shalom. Shir Lama'alot, a song for those who ascend. I turn my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. You see, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming, now and forever. May our beloved Selma go unto God in peace. Hatzur tamim paulo kichod rachav mishpat el emunah ve'inav el tzadik v'yashar hu. Tzadik atah Adonai lamidu lachayot asher biyadcha pikadon koruchot chalila lecha zichronenu limchot v'yihu na'einecha b'rachamim leinu kuchot ki lecha Adon harachamim v'haslichot. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam dayan ha'emet. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, the judge of truth. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yishem Adonai mevorach, v'hu rachum yechaper avon v'lo yashchit, v'hirba lashiv apo v'lo yair kol chamato, v'yashov he'afar al haaretz shehaya, v'haruach tashuv el ha'Elohim asher netana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May Selma's soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and may God send comfort to those who mourn, grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. In the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Kohelet, we read, L'kol zman ve'et l'kol chefetz tachat hashamayim. There is a time for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for weeping and a time for laughing, a time for silence and a time for speaking. I want to thank everyone who has tuned in to this service. While the pandemic continues to keep families and loved ones apart from each other and continues to force us to navigate these challenging times of grief and mourning in such unfamiliar and such unsettling ways, we are still very thankful for the technology we have and our ability to overcome some of the challenges of physical distance. Today we are here to honor Selma Stein, Sima bat Yaakov Ufeya, the daughter of Jack and Pauline Diamond, Zichronam Livracha of blessed memory, mother of Jeff and Cheryl, Marlis and Jeff, and Ellen and Greg, grandma to Sheena, Anita, Leanna, Michaela, Gabriel, and Aaliyah, sister of Harold and sister-in-law of Paula. Selma passed away on Monday, the 24th day in the Hebrew month of Adar. She was 88. She was predeceased by her parents, Jack and Pauline, by her sisters, Leatrice, Naomi, and Gloria, and by her beloved husband of over 40 years, Mel, who passed away in 1994. Zichronam Livracha, all of blessed memory. Over the last several years, Selma has battled health problems, especially in the last year. But we have not come together today to rehash those painful feelings, which is why in Jewish tradition we often say, death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is better than constant sickness. We never want our loved ones to suffer, and we never want to remember their suffering. Instead, we come together today to honor Selma Stein, to pay tribute to her and to her life, and to remember her as she was at her best. This is the highest respect we can offer in Jewish tradition as we accompany her here to her final resting place. We remember Selma fondly as her family has described her to me in their own words. Intensely independent, strong, resilient, maybe even stubborn. A woman with spunk and her own brand of sassiness. But above all, a theme that kept getting repeated and repeated in my talks with the family and the words they wrote and shared with me was her caring, her compassion, her kindness, generosity, How considerate she was, how selfless. How amazingly devoted she was to her children and to her grandchildren. Visits, phone calls, always wanting updates on their lives so she could beam with pride and celebrate their successes. How she was a source of unwavering support to them, always offering reassurance and encouragement, even if she may have actually disagreed. No one knew. She was always in their corner, always their cheerleader. Whether it was family or friends, Selma was always there to help, run an errand, babysit, or even just listen, simply to be there. She never complained, often had a pragmatic approach to life, and was fiercely private and proud, always wanting to be in control of her own life, never wanting to be a burden to her children. That's part of why she never wanted to leave her home. The family home on Brock Street, where she raised her children, where her grandchildren in Winnipeg remember visiting, dinners almost every Sunday night. That house was a place of solace for her, a haven. She never cared about keeping up with current trends. Instead, she embraced the retro vibe. As her Winnipeg grandchildren, who treated it like a second home, fondly would recall, the fuzzy white wallpaper, the blue shag carpet, the old rotary phone on the wall, the typewriter in the basement, the gumball machine, the cedar closet with its many fur coats. That home was where fun Selma flourished. The birthday parties, always with so many balloons. The legendary Hanukkah parties that always included a treasure hunt planned by Selma to lead the kids to the presents. That became something everyone in the family, the extended family, looked forward to every year, and has even become a tradition carried on by her children. That was the house where Selma and Melville built their life, but not where they first started. In fact, they were set up on a date, and Selma always said it was a miracle Melville got a second date out of her after taking her to the airport on that first date to watch planes fly in and out. He may have thought that was fun. Not so sure she did. But they managed to find enough in common, their values, being on the same page, the way they looked at life, and built a life together, deeply in love and devoted to each other in a marriage of over 40 years. At first, they lived in Brandon, where their 3 children were born in quick succession, Jeff, Marlis, Ellen, but then relocated to Winnipeg and eventually to the famous home on Brock. Together, they shared a love of music, the arts, always going on outings to the concert hall, for the symphony, for the opera, for the ballet. Selma would later tell her grandchildren, her granddaughters in Winnipeg, and show off pictures with her in her white gloves and the gowns she used to wear before going out on such events and occasions. It was also in that home where her love of baking would shine. Not so much a fan of cooking, but certainly a fan of baking. There was that magic freezer, as Marlis recalls, that always seemed to contain some type of treat that on any visit was quickly defrosted and eaten. The famous brown sugar buns, or the cinnamon bread she would make and rise on the floor registers, or the rugelach she would often show others how to make. The dinners at her house for her Winnipeg family, the Sunday dinners with Grammy potatoes, very crisp, Grandma's spaghetti, sometimes kasha and knishes, and serving tongs that looked like chicken feet. But above all, the memories center around Grandma laughing loudly at the table. She loved to laugh, had a dry sense of humor, and certainly embraced the fun. Ellen remembers and shared with me that throughout the years, on visits and phone calls, no matter what the occasion, No matter what was going on, she and her mom always found a way to laugh. After Melville died, rather suddenly, over 26 years ago, Selma was heartbroken, but managed, with her resilience, to soldier on. She continued to go on outings to celebrate the arts, to the symphony, the opera, the ballet. She found joy in her toy poodle, taking him for walks, visiting with neighbors, and of course, her grandkids would love playing with that poodle. She kept up as an inquisitive, thoughtful person, keeping her mind sharp, reading the newspaper cover to cover, crosswords every day, an avid reader. Someone who loved to be well-informed and well-read. And certainly always listening to music. In the last year, after leaving her house finally in Winnipeg and living with Marlis and Jeff in London, Ontario, they recall that there was music on all the time, and that Saturday afternoon at the opera, a radio program was never missed. Music and art always in her life, passed on to her children and her grandchildren. There was another story Ellen shared with me that speaks to Selma and to her incredible bond with Melville. He worked a lot, I'm told, with an automotive supply chain business, often working long hours that would keep him out of the house for meals. Selma would send him with sandwiches she had packed, and if he was going to be working late, she would take dinner to his office, where they would eat together at his desk before she went home and he continued on working. In the years after he died, she would speak lovingly of vacations and trips she took with him. She would regale her granddaughters and other grandchildren with stories of how much she loved him and how much she deeply missed him. But she would also reminisce on her own childhood, growing up in Fort William, with her sisters, with whom she was incredibly close, with her own grandmother. Leanna remembers stories that Selma, her grandma, would tell of going to a Jewish camp in the summer and then spending the entire summer with her grandmother, something that she obviously cherished and held very dear to her. Speaking of her as a sister, she always looked forward to a call from her brother Harold. And when her sisters Naomi first and then Gloria got sick, she went to Toronto to visit Naomi and to be with her when she passed, and did the same for Gloria in California. As a mother and a grandmother, as we've discussed, her care and compassion never wavered. Her granddaughters in Winnipeg remember that being close, living nearby, and being in the same city gave them access that they have grown to cherish and hold very dear to their hearts. Sheena called Grandma a cheerleader who attended every event with bells on. Birthdays, every Jewish holiday, every piano recital, every graduation. If there was any possible kind of event that she could celebrate, that she could share in, Grandma Selma was there. They remember outings to Grapes, playing ping pong in the basement. And all of the stories she would share, including the fond memories she had of buying that family home on Brock Street. Two quotes that I wanted to share as we draw this eulogy to a conclusion from two of the grandkids. First from Sheena. As an adult, I have learned that the kindness, acceptance, adoration, and support she showed me while growing up is far more rare and special than I realized at the time. And to paint another picture for us, Anita shared, in most of my memories, she is laughing. At any moment, I can bring that image to mind. I can hear her laugh. She delighted in us. We were so loved. We loved her. How lucky we are to have been together. As her son Jeff told me in what he wrote for me to be able to share this afternoon at this service, She was admired and loved by all, not because of doing anything special, but just because of being the way she was. Fun, with a sense of humor, independent and strong, caring, compassionate, selfless and considerate. Her Hebrew name is Sima, which translates to a treasure. This is exactly what Selma was to those in her family, especially, and the others who crossed paths with her throughout her life, and how she will be remembered as a treasure. It's my honor now to recite in Selma Stein's honor the El Malei Rachamim prayer, the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromi, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim Uterim, Kezoar Arakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat Sima Bar Yaakov Ufeya Shelcha Leolama, Began Edente Menuchata, Anabal Harachamim, Hastirea Beseter Knafecha Leolami, Utzror Bitzror Achaim Enishmata, Adonai Nachalata, V'tanuach V'shalom Hamishkava, V'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Selma Stein, Sima Bar Yaakov Ufeya, the daughter of Jack and Pauline, Zichronam Livracha, of blessed memory, for she has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that she find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. While, of course, we would prefer to be all together, we still feel the support, the encouragement. We feel that you have joined your hearts together with those who are here, who are in mourning, who are in grief. And while we cannot have a traditional Shiva still because of the pandemic, I encourage everyone, if you haven't already, or again, to reach out to Selma's family with text messages, phone calls, emails, to continue showing that support and helping them through, especially the first week of what will be a very difficult journey of grief and mourning. The family did want me to thank in particular one niece, Sherry Cohn, who is so often with phone calls, reaching out and checking in with updates on Selma. To everyone in the family, here and watching, I offer these words of tradition. Hamakom yinachem echem betoch sha'ar avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted and consoled. May God comfort and console you among all those who are in mourning or who have ever been in mourning. And now in conclusion, we turn to the words of the mourner's Kaddish. And then family members will have an opportunity to shovel earth into the grave, to complete the mitzvah of laying Selma to rest with our own hands, kind, knowing, sorrowful hands, hands that once held their hands. This act is painful, but it is also one born of love and compassion for someone who meant so much to so many people. Just before we turn to the Kaddish, let me offer words that we mentioned in the opening. In Hebrew, Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. These are the words of Job, the epitome of suffering in Jewish tradition. God you have given, God you have taken away, blessed be the name of God. May Selma's memory be for a blessing, as we mark today that her essence will never leave our hearts and souls. After all, as her son Jeff told me, all of her children, and through them their grandchildren, have incorporated her best traits into their lives by the way Selma and Melville lived. The Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divra Chirutei v'Yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal Shemei dekudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav huyaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who creates peace and harmony on high bring peace and harmony to us, to all Israel, to everyone. As again we say, Amen. Thank you to our volunteer pallbearers who continue to help us during these difficult times with so many restrictions on gatherings. We're so grateful to have you in our community. And thank you again to everyone for tuning in to this service honoring Selma.